The beginning of the reign of the Supermen, I think, is straight to kind of introduction of these replacements.
These 4 Supermen, what do they each represent?
Tim, what is it like to take this iconic part of Superman history into depth?
It's all I think about. It keeps me up at night. It's the most incredible opportunity that I've ever been given in my own life, given by you. Thank you for bringing me in.
You're welcome. You know, the only way these get done is if you just imagine that something's going to happen and it's not going to get made, and you just have to kind of limp along like it's going to happen. Because if you really think about, I better do this right, then you kind of can't do it. Because it is a huge story, it's a famous story, everybody knows it, and if you really took a second to go, oh, everyone is going to have their own thing that they want from this, and maybe we're not delivering. It's too much pressure. So really what we try to do is say, what emotionally, what are the beats that you remember from this, and what do we not want to miss?
Because, I mean, look, we can't, I wish we could just, put a camera on, and use the comics as a storyboard, but we don't, unfortunately, have that kind of time.
That would be a 17-hour movie.
It would be a 17-hour movie, especially with these comics.
And there would be one show that's just about Bibbo,
I'd watch it. Coming soon, the Bibbo movie.
Well, there is some violence. I should warn you if you have a trigger warning. I think this takes this story you remember from when you read it and pushes it as far as they would let us, and there was some...
Yeah, I mean, look, I think we're talking to people who probably are familiar with the story, and there's a little bit, and there's some of these guys, they'll mess you up, and so it's tricky. It's tricky because we want to make sure that we're still hitting those emotional beats. But man, there's a lot of action in this movie.
Really is.
There's a lot of action, and you get to see Cyborg Superman and Eradicator and Superboy and Steel, all these guys coming up against each other and against some other really big threats as well.
Maybe. Well, they're all there.
Do you remember how in the comics how it played out?
Yeah.
You remember, because it's not a Justice League story, really.
Yes. They would mess it up. I mean, it's very much a Superman story, so having the entire league there kind of throws things off, and we don't do it exactly.
They went
like
on a
that.
spaceship and took off. I think that was the end of it. But we
came up with another solution.
We've got there. You'll see some of the Justice League.
I'm sorry, guys. So was it difficult coming in to write the back half of this 2-part movie?
I mean, in some ways, it was difficult because there are so many new characters that suddenly show up on the scene, and you want to make sure everybody's getting, justice. But I think that having that incredible Death of Superman was so great. That movie was I remember I read the script. I mean, that movie was still in production, but I got to read the script when we were starting on this, and it gave us exactly the right launchpad. I finished that script and I said, I know exactly what we're doing.
And the tone. I mean, the tone was all there, and the voices were all there. It's kind of exactly the way you wanted that story to play out. And even in the comics, it does feel like a different era. It's like Superman is dead. Why? Now what happens? And so it seemed like it's a logical place for a split.
If you remember, I was a kid who was like, Superman is dead. Like, we didn't live in a world where Superman was going to come back. This was it. And these new guys, some of them, one of them, all of them might be Superman, might not be Superman. That was the difficult thing, because we now live in a world where we know that what happened is that Superman did come back.
Great.
Yeah, in the comics.
Spoiler.
In the comics, that is what happened.
Wait.
But
I think it was like, I was not a kid when this came out, but I was in college, I had no money, and I would go to Forbidden Planet and pull out the show and just say, is it Cyborg Superman? Is he the Superman? Is it Eradicator? I would just kind of flip through because I wouldn't spend the $2.
You didn't know. Everybody, I remember my friends, we all argued about it. We're like, oh no, it's definitely Cyborg.
Yeah.
It's I mean, like, or it's going to be Superboy. Like, he's going to, be the new Superman.
I think it's a necessary follow-up to the movie. It's as much as I love Wrath of Khan. If the entire Star Trek series ended with Wrath of Khan, it's a beautiful ending, but it's kind of a bummer. I mean, you kind of need to bring Spock back, and that's kind of the place where we were. It's like, what's the most respectful way you can bring these characters back and address all these characters that we know from comic book history: Cyborg, Superman, Eradicator, Superboy, and Steel. And so we had to give time to each of these characters, and then really, I think even more time to Lois, because Lois is the heart of this movie, and it's her job to figure out who, if any of these dudes, has anything to do with her superpower.
I looked at it in the reverse. Maybe this is just an egocentric way to look at it, but we'd never seen Reign of the Supermen on screen, and
just like only in video games, right?
Yeah. So I think what you had to do was do Death of Superman, and do it as its own thing. So a lot of people say, they already did that story. You had to do it so that we can do Reign of the Superman, so that we can meet these characters and understand what it means to have that world where Superman doesn't exist. And what do we do? What we did too was, I think, one of the things we amplified from the comics. We took a theme from the comics that we brought to life in an even bigger way, and it is about our responsibility and what we do as everyday citizens. When that hope, that symbol of hope, is gone, how we, fight for it, what we do, what are the choices we make to bring it back, to try to bring it back. In that way, I think absolutely it's a necessary step, like you said, in the story of Superman. You have to learn what it's like to lose him. You have to learn what it's like to not have him, so that you can maybe appreciate him.
Absolutely. That's what the whole thing is about. And I think even Lois recognizes in each of these guys something that reminds her of Kal-El. And hopefully we pulled it off and that you see the same thing.
I think it's a great question. I mean, I think that we've already been through this with Death of Superman, right? We keep killing Superman. We've seen it done again and again. And one of the things that can be disappointing about that is that, then what is it? Then what do we do? Is it just that's a snuff film? At that point, right? But to then get to do this, which is a story about, not to spoil anything, but even if you don't bring Superman back, it's a story about bringing Superman, the heart of Superman, back.
There's also, I think there's people our age or younger, there's some satisfaction finally seeing this story told. I mean, even if this Death of Superman is covered in some other media, our expectation for a moment is, oh, he's dead. We get to see Cyborg Superman and Superboy, and we didn't get that, So there's part of us that is kind of longing to see that played out. So I'm hoping that we did it successfully.
As a from the four Supermen.
Favorite to write? I will not choose between my children. No. Superboy was just so much fun to write.
Superboy has some attitude problems. He is really fun.
The toughest one is Eradicator. And what happened was James Tucker came in one day in a meeting and said, I know what to do. Here's how we do Eradicator. And I think he was absolutely right. I can't spoil it. I think it's absolutely right.
Yeah.
And I think it ended up being, he's one of my favorite characters now. But it was a big challenge. Yeah, I mean, we didn't write Death of Superman. We did Reign of the Superman.
That scene's also from the comic.
Yeah, I know it's in the comics, but I was just like...
Well, I think that but overall it's the same team, and I think there's a desire on our part to be as genuine and authentic to the comic book, the source material, as possible. But it is a huge, and Bimbo comes back, and there's a lot of heartbreak and sincerity in this.
What I was going to say was that I didn't write that movie, but I would say that if I were making an argument for it, or if I had written it, what I might say is, what the way I interpret it is, it's not about the specific religious iconography there. It's about faith. Bimbo Bibowski has faith in Superman, and that faith is challenged when Superman's gone.
You know, he's a member of the Martian Manhunter, being the member of one of the members of the Justice League. Involvement as far as with, I mean, he's just one of the guys. I mean, you know, his role in this film is, of course, I mean, when you see the film, and you'll understand when I say he's one of the guys. I mean, he's one of the leaders, you know, as far as, I guess, upholding the moral compass of the group. Yeah, I mean, but as far as his skill set, I mean, when they lose someone like Superman, he is someone that actually, as strong as Superman, for the, you know, the ability to fly, the telekinesis, the telepathy, all of that, you know, I mean, there's so his skill set is just ridiculous, you know. So, I mean, his role in this is just, I mean, he's there to fill a void, you know. See, you know what I did? I went back and watched Death of Superman again, and then immediately went right into watching Reign of the Superman, and I think it will. Look, you're not gonna outdo the duel. That duel between Superman and Doomsday was crazy, right? So I mean, it's not gonna go that far, you know, as far as that's concerned. But the fact that now that there's 4 Supermen, and how they battle it out, and you know, I'm trying to make sure I don't give away anything. I feel like in a very different way. No, in a very different way. In a very different. I know some things. In a very different way, it's just as interesting, and also the relationship with Lois Lane, as far as Lois Lane and you know, first, you know, finding out this for the first time that Clark is Superman, and then having to deal with the loss of 2 people now, you know, who are now the same person in her mind, and just and then the relationship between her and Wonder Woman. You know, I mean, there's some things, you know, like some things, you know. I don't want to give away things, you know, but some things I think you'll love. Yeah. For me as an actor, see, I grew up watching Justice League Unlimited, and then of course Young Justice later on, and I was a huge fan of Martian Manhunter. I really loved Miss Martian in Young Justice, so then I was always loving the relationship between her and Martian Manhunter. And so Carl Lumbly was like a huge influence on me, and then, you know, it's the voice I hear. And so there's that, and then of course his story as far as his connection to home, to Mars, and being able to, he's harboring the souls of 1 million green Martians who have, you know, who are no more, you know, and he's the sole representative. And and so you couple those 2 things together. It's finding sort of that depth and gravitas. Because there's one thing to do Carl Lumbly, but then there's another thing to find the depth and of truth of what that is, and how you connect to it is through, well, what's his story, and that's how I connected to it. I think it's a must-watch because it's a great story. It's a really good story. For me, it's all about story. If the story is good and makes sense, sometimes it doesn't, then I think it's something worth watching. The animation, of course, with what Phil Barras has been able to do, it actually looks, the animation in this is actually really great. And I was watching it last night, and I was just like, man, this animation actually looks really cool. But it's been consistent, of course, through Flashpoint, through I'm trying to think of, Assault on Arkham. I'm trying to think of all the ones. There's so many. But how it's evolved over the years. The animation, yes, that'll evolve. But for me, I think the thing that's most important is the story. Is the story relevant and at the same time interesting? And I think this one is. Well, I mean, I see everything. Yeah, I see everything. You know, as far as, I mean, you're talking about DC now, right? So, I mean, as far as, well, I mean, I've seen everything. Fine, I've seen it. I mean, like, as far as the live action, I watch all of the CW shows. I watch, as far as the films, you know, I mean, I see everything. So, even from the Return of Superman all the way, you know, to, you know, going like, you know what I mean? Like, I've seen everything. Yeah, like, yeah. Now, what are they gonna do as far as a Martian Manhunter? I would love to see him be a part of that Justice League. You know, I was hoping that they would do more with Cyborg. You know, as far as like, and I would love to see that. I thought it was very interesting. You know, just seeing his origin, and I kind of want to see like more. You know, like I want to see a Cyborg movie. I want to see a Martian Manhunter movie. I want to see. Actually, we'd love to have seen those first. You know, before they all got together. You know, they all got together, so that's cool. But now I'd like to see them in their own thing. You know. Yeah, but Martian Manhunter, man, because his skill set is on point.
How many Oreos did you eat to prepare for the role?
I ate none. I haven't had an Oreo in years.
So sad.
But I had to go through my sense memory. I think that's a part of that's a part of his narrative. Now, unfortunately, with the Supermen, you know, showing up on the scene, because this now takes place, you know, there's like 6 months later. There's no time to grieve about that. It's more now about, well, who are these guys, and like, well, how do we deal with them? But yeah, I mean, there's definitely a shared thing there when it comes to our stories and the fact that now he's gone. And as a friend, you know, he's a friend. And, you know, when I think back to the animated stuff, you know, he's the one that you know that welcomed me with open arms, you know, and where Batman didn't, you know, he wasn't, well, he's not receptive to anybody, but like Superman was the guy who like brought me in and like made me feel like, you know, feel at home. So yeah, I think there's no change, only because. You know, it's not there, and it's not there in the script. But I mean, as far as that, I mean, there's a change as far as stepping up. Yes, there's in the voice. Yes, there's a stepping up. There's a more authoritative feel for him. But yeah, there's so many. I mean, you got Batman as the leader. You got, you know, but I think that's the voice of reason. That's consistent, you know.
Well, you know, the original Superman Doomsday movie did really well, and it's what started all these DVDs that we've done since. And it's been 10 years, and in Hollywood terms, that's usually around the time we remake movies. Except Hulk, then you do it every other year. But, so I think they felt it was time to revisit, especially since the first movie was limited in its running time. They only had one movie to tell the story, and so they chose to cut this part of the story out. So 10 years later, our bosses were like, you know, that did really well. It's a good story, but because we were just starting out, they weren't confident that they could tell the whole story, which would have needed a long movie or 2 parts. So it's been 10 years. The original movie kick-started this line. The line's a success, and now they want to revisit it. So it's kind of not a do-over. It's more of a going back to the same source material and examining it in a different, more full way. And so that's kind of it. The thing I liked about this version is we actually have the Justice League to use. And as part of the thing is, people forget that the original story arc was a part of a continuity, an existing DC continuity. And that's why those particular Justice League members were in that story. And so we took that story, the idea of that story, and plugged it into our existing continuity. And so it just was a natural process of elimination. So we're adapting the story, meaning the general story, not the particulars of who was in it at that particular time. Because, there was a Supergirl in it, but she was a protoplasm or something.
Yeah.
Like, none of that would play as a story. You can't just say, oh, Supergirl's in this. Oh, but she happens to be a protoplasm, even though there's a Supergirl on TV who's not. And there, so there's necessary changes that had to be made to make it work. But the general story of how we get here and there is basically the same. Particulars are a little different because out of necessity. And, I said fanny packs and member jackets aren't in style anymore. Padded shoulders and mullets. But so yeah, some things had to change. But the gist of the story is the same. Yeah, it was challenging because if I had been running things, if I had my choice, we would have gotten to this a little later because I would have had another Superman movie in the meantime. I had plans for showing the breakup of one of Superman. I knew they would ultimately have to break up because that really doesn't make sense anyway. I don't know how they got together in the first place. I'm joking. But that question was solved a long time ago. George Perez, I think John Byrne did a story where they actually talked about why they didn't date. But I was interested in them dating because I was like, well, it'd be interesting not to see them date so much as to see how they break up and how that would go. And in Death of Superman, you see that it was an amicable split. They basically agreed that they were just too similar, that there was no yin-yang, there was just yin and yin. So, but yeah, with these continuity movies, sometimes we have to do a little time jump. Some things get left between the movies, and we kind of explain them in something happened, and we get the gist of what happened by their dialogue. And so, but it's challenging because you don't know. I didn't know we were going to do this movie as soon as we were going to do it. I thought I'd have a little more time to get to it and build to it, but I don't set the schedule. So. I said I thought when I got this gig, I was going to just be doing what Tim had been doing, which is standalone movies. That's when he asked me to take over. That's what I thought I was going to do, and then they sprung this continuity thing, and it's like, oh, that's a challenge. So, I've done that for series work. I've done continuity, but for doing it for movies is a whole different animal because you get 2 movies a year to tell a story, and it's been about 5 years, and so a handful of movies. I like the freedom, not freedom, that's the wrong word. There's a lot of leeway with animation. There's a lot more room to be creative without a lot of people signing off on it, and I've been lucky. Those people who worked at Warner Bros., we tend to have a little bit more autonomy in what we do to pick and choose, and I love animation. There's things you can do in animation you can't do in any other format. And so now, if they ask for some advice, sure, I'm full of advice, but I don't know if I'd want to have that huge responsibility. See, I'm old. I've read a lot of Batman comics and comics in general, and the stories that resonate with me aren't big fan favorites. They don't show up on these, exit polls they do at the movies or whatever. So, smaller stories. There's a lot of little small stories. Of course, I can't think of anyone right now, but any number of Bronze Era stories that are very simple at beginning, middles, and ends could be expanded into a movie. The adaptations are an interesting challenge, but the standalone movies, or not standalone movies, but the original plots we've come up with, I've liked as much or more than some of the adaptations. I'll put it this way: I like Super Sons, and I like the concept. I don't know that it would be Tim Drake. It'd probably be more their current version, but I like Super Sons. I liked them back when it was the golden Bronze Age.
Right.
It was Bob Haney writing, and they all had mutton chop sideburns.
So are you telling us to look out for Super Sons?
Not for me, not yet. I would kill to do it, but no. I've made it known I'd like it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Is it safe to call this continuity to Tuckerverse?
Well,
What do you call it?
people, I don't call it anything. The Brave and the Bold would be Tuckerverse for me because that's something I really guide. But I don't think it's New 52 verse either. So I don't, it's not like we go into this saying, oh, we're going to name our universe after ourselves. Tim doesn't go around saying the Tim.